A recently published book by a Canadian think tank claims that Canada is under what it calls routine and corrosive attacks. The work, titled The 1867 Project, Why Canada Should Be Cherished, Not Cancelled, takes aim at cancel culture. It says the rise of critical theory, identity politics, and ideological politics in the education system play a part in this issue. The book consists of essays and other writings by 20 Canadian voices, and it is divided into three distinctive parts. Dr. Mark Milke is the editor of the book and the president of the Aristotle Foundation for Public Policy, the think tank that published this book. Joining us now to discuss this project and its importance to Canadians is Dr. Mark Milke himself. Sir, welcome to Forum Daily.
Thanks for having me on, Nima.
Quite the interesting book that you have provided us, Dr. Milke. Now, something that really stood out to me is the language used in this book, especially in the media sheet you provided us. I want to point to the routine and corrosive attacks by modern society against Canada. Part of this book points to academic doctrines such as the rise of identity politics, socialism, critical race theory, and others as contributing to this issue. So can you tell us a little bit more about the facts and the science behind all these claims and what other factors are playing into this?
Sure. Well, for example, when one of my board members has his son come home with, something a teacher gave him, which is called a privilege wheel, where depending on your skin color, your gender, your faith or lack thereof, you're privileged or not. This is corrosive. And it's backwards and it's rolling back the progress that has been made in Canada over the years. Ontario started to ban discrimination based on ethnicity, on gender, in accommodation and housing and employment in the early 1950s. That was systemic racism before they outlawed it. Today, you can meet an individual bigot somewhere, but it's not the same. Canada in 2023 is not Alabama in 1923. So, and to suggest otherwise is simply to be ignorant of the facts and history. So, what we try and do in the 1867 project is say, are you really sure you want to treat Canada as an oak tree that you want to rip down, as opposed to understanding that nations like Canada, like any society and a civilization, takes decades, hundreds of years to build. And when you see something wrong, what you do is you prune a branch that's diseased and it makes the tree stronger. That's the analogy for Canada. Canada's never been perfect. It's not perfect now. It never will be perfect because you and I are imperfect. And people will look at us 100 years from now and ask, why did you think X? So some modesty is required. Past generations, starting 20,000 years ago with the first Indigenous people, as we call them now, who crossed the Bering Strait, came here, started to build the country. There are many things to be proud of without ignoring the bad spots in the past.
Now, this book also claims that historical Canadian figures like John A. Macdonald, Egerton Ryerson, they have been wrongfully cancelled by modern society. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and the evidence and facts that this book provides to back this claim?
Sure. Greg Piasatsky, who's a Toronto lawyer and a citizen of the Métis Nation of Ontario, wrote a great chapter on John A. Macdonald. To give you one clear example, Macdonald, helped create what we now know as the RCMP, the Northwest Mounted Police. And the thinking behind that was to protect Indigenous peoples on the prairies from newer settlers. And that's exactly what they did. And Macdonald was incredibly sympathetic, actually, for his era to Indigenous folk, which is not what you hear these days. So Greg goes into some detail in the 1867 project to say, hold on, before you cancel a guy, literally renaming schools, taking down statues, you might want to better understand what he in fact did. And when he was responding to, he was a racist. People in his day were racist. It was 1867. But even Macdonald was responding to a liberal opposition of his day that didn't want to do anything for Indigenous peoples and in fact told him to spend less on them. And Macdonald said, no, we're going to rescue them from famine on the prairies. These are not facts that are well known. It doesn't mean Macdonald was perfect or hold the views we do today, but that's not the way to look at history. But did he help in some ways contribute to the Canada that we became? And the answer to that is yes, the good Canada that we became.
All right, Dr. Milke, now I just have about a minute left here, but moving forward in terms of building a better Canada, we're hearing a lot about this is only going to be possible through Indigenous reconciliation, acknowledgement of the past, acknowledgement of historic leaders and their connection to residential school systems, the dark side of Canada's history, as some may say. So where does this book stand when it comes to addressing Indigenous reconciliation, intergenerational trauma, and the acknowledgement of the past?
There's a lot there. Let me say this. What Canadians need to do is unite around laudable ideas, not divide around identities, whether it's Indigenous or anything else. Laudable ideas such as the worth of the individual, the fact that women have rights in Canada and should, which was an early development in Canada compared to many countries, unite around the laudable ideas that in fact started in the 19th century, the worth of the individual in law and policy, unite around free and open inquiry and free markets, a free society, unite around laudable ideas, don't divide based on identities. That's been what most of human history has done, and it ends badly.